IndyCar drivers coming over to Formula 1 doesn't happen very often, but when it does, there's always that extra level of anticipation because of how IndyCar is seen compared to Formula 1. In ye olden days, it was not uncommon to see drivers attempt other forms of motorsport. Graham Hill went to the US in 1966 as a rookie at the Indianapolis 500 and won. Jim Clark won it the year before, and when Graham won in 1966, the Indy 500 of that year was looking like it would have been a Brit 1-2-3. A 1-2-3 of some combination of Jimmy, Graham and Jackie Stewart. And the Americans didn't seem to like that potential result very much, because the Indy 500 is their race. Similar to how the attitude to Cadillac has been, Yanks in our sport? GTFO. But since that Indy 500 of 1966, people who are known more as being Formula 1 drivers have made their way over the pond and given IndyCar a try. Emerson Fittipaldi is a big example. Nigel Mansell did it in 1993 and won as a rookie, making him the only person to hold the IndyCar, or CART as it then was, title and the Formula 1 title at the same time, because of the overlap between the two series. Other drivers who have ended up on the other side of the Atlantic as F1 rejects include Teo Fabi, Mauricio Gugelmin, Mark Blundell, Christian Fittipaldi, Stefan Johansson, Christian Danner and Roberto Moreno. And in more recent times, Roman Grosjean, Marcus Ericsson and Takuma Sato spring to mind, with Ericsson and Sato being winners of the Indy 500 within the last 10 years. So what about those who have gone the other way? Well, there's Mario Andretti for a start, and he went as far as to win the Formula 1 World Championship in 1978, racing under the American flag after being born in a part of Italy that is now Croatia, which is probably the most American thing that one can do, really. A nation built on immigration, and a guy immigrates to that country and ends up doing big things for said country. There's also Dan Gurney, who had his own F1 team in the 60s, Eddie Cheever, who raced in Formula 1 in the 80s, and then Michael Andretti, who flopped in spectacular fashion when he came over in 1993. Then there's Jacques Villeneuve, Juan Pablo Montoya, and I guess you can include Sebastian Bourdais in there as well. Maybe Zanardi. Obviously, that's not everybody. If I didn't mention the guy that you were thinking of, they weren't forgotten. And really, Bourdais was the last one to have an American open-wheel racing career before an F1 career, because somebody like Logan Sargent started over in Europe, racing in British Formula 4 and finished third in the 2017 season. A season that was utterly dominated by Jamie Caroline, and in second place was some Australian kid called Pastry. He's apparently pretty good as well. So why don't more drivers come over from the States? Why don't we see more stars and stripes on the grid? Well, super license qualification points is one thing, and it probably doesn't help that IndyCar gets fewer than other series. But in recent days, an American has signed for a Formula 1 team, because IndyCar star Colton Herta has signed as Cadillac's test and reserve driver. So, who is Colton Herta? And why do we keep hearing about him and his desires to get a super license? Well, Colton Herta is an American IndyCar driver and the son of Brian Herta. And Brian had an IndyCar career spanning between 1994 and 2006 across kart, Champ Car and IndyCar, having a best finish of 8th in 1996, 1998 and 2005. He also dabbled in sports cars, doing the American Le Mans series between 2002 and 2008, and did the 2002 Le Mans 24 Hour with David Brabham and Jan Magnussen. But the car didn't finish. Colton's career was one that started off with a lot of hype. When he started in IndyCar full-time in 2019, driving for Harding Steinbrenner Racing, he was the first driver born in the 2000s to take the start of a race, and was just 18 years old at the time. At the Circuit of the Americas round, he became the youngest ever winner, at again 18 years old. He would win again at Laguna Seca, which is a track where his dad often did well, and finished 7th overall in the standings. Only 5 points behind Felix Rosenqvist, who was the Rookie of the Year in that year. In 2020, he stayed at Steinbrenner and got some pretty hefty backing from Andretti Autosport. He finished 7th at Texas, 8th at the Indy 500, and later that year he'd win at Mid-Ohio and get a 2nd place at the Indy Road Race. His performance in 2020 was good enough that he finished 3rd in the overall standings, and the hype was building. So for 2021 he was now at Andretti full-time, and had the potential to win the championship. He took a win at St. Petersburg before winning again at Road America, and I think you can see a pattern developing here. While the potential was there, he was often let down by reliability, strategy and his own driver errors. One of these being at Nashville, where he lost the lead to Ericsson and then walled it trying to catch back up. He'd take 2 more wins at Laguna and Long Beach and then finish 5th in the standings. So this led to rampant speculation that he'd come over here to race in Formula 1 for 2022. But he stayed in America, being partnered by Alex Rossi and Romain Grosjean, two drivers who, funnily enough, have Formula 1 experience. And 2022 was a difficult season, with strategy, reliability and mistakes ruining his season, and he'd end the season down in 10th while taking a win on the Indy Road Course. In 2023 he would finish 10th again, which wasn't doing his super license credentials any good. 2024 was his best season on record. Podiums at St Petersburg, Long Beach and Milwaukee, along with wins at Toronto and Nashville, led him to second in the championship, 31 points behind eventual winner Alex Palou. So the talk started bubbling away again. Herta to Formula 1 at some point, as well as the online chatter that started when the FIA allowed Antonelli to have his super license at 17 years old, while Herta wasn't getting a sniff at all. And I covered that news story when it all happened. IndyCar fans were calling it anti-American and stuff. But either way, Herta would finish the 2025 IndyCar season in 5th. And this week Herta signed for Cadillac as their test and reserve driver, as mentioned earlier in the video. And all of this looks like this one big Hail Mary to try and get Herta his super license so that he can finally race in Formula 1. What they're going to do is stick Herta in Formula 2, and it won't be his first rodeo in Europe. He raced in the MSA Formula Junior Championship in 2015, finishing 3rd overall with 2 wins at Snetterton, a win at Rockingham, that being the one near Kettering and not the other one, and finished the season off with a win on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. These days the series is called British Formula 4, and the winner of that 2015 season was Lando Norris. Dan Ticktum was also on the entry list, Mr. Angry himself, the crossest bloke in London, or the man from Hell Monte. Currently, Herta needs something minimal, like 5 more points to get the super license that he needs to be able to race in Formula 1. So by doing some clean free practice sessions next year, he's going to get at least 4. The others? Well, even the most average of seasons in Formula 2 will get him there. So really, he doesn't need to do any free practice sessions. He just needs to complete Formula 2 by not ballsing it up. I mean, sort of. Because points come off after 3 years. I actually don't know how many he's going to have after the ones he's accumulated so far will come off, so I think he's going to lose the ones for 2022? Yeah, 2022. I think. But even then, he's only going to lose 1, so we'll call it 6 just to be safe. So all he's got to do is finish 8th in Formula 2. That sounds easy enough, doesn't it? That will be enough to get him his license. If he doesn't, well then he's only got to do 1, maybe 2 free practice sessions. Because, like mentioned, the FIA's own series get more points than IndyCar does, and I've got them up on your screen. And you need 40 to get a license, and 1st down to 3rd in Formula 2 will get you the required amount. But 5th and 6th are also quite generous. IndyCar, meanwhile, you can finish 2nd or 3rd twice in a row and get a super license, and Herta's finishing hasn't been consistent enough to get the required points, which is why he hasn't got a license. His great 2024 season has been the source of his increased super license points in recent years, and it's helped him to get close enough that he doesn't exactly have to do much to get the required 40. Herta has even said that this is his last real chance to get to Formula 1, and things have fallen into place well enough that he's got the opportunity to have a crack at doing it. Doing it with the all-American team that has a base at Silverstone and engines from Italy, as well as a Mexican and Finnish driver and a British team principal. But either way, the opportunity is there, and there is now the chance to grab it with both hands. If he stayed in IndyCar and tried to get the required points over the next 2 years or so, there's the chance he won't score the amount before his 30 points accumulated in 2024 are written off. So really, he has to do what he's doing now, and that is go into Formula 2 and get the remaining points. However, he's doing this knowing that the seat at Cadillac isn't guaranteed whatsoever. Perez and Bottas are on 2-year deals, enough to help Cadillac get its footing, and it also gives Herta enough time to get going over here. As Dan Taurus, the boss of Andretti, said recently to a US-based podcast, Colton has to learn the tracks, the cars, the way that things are done in Europe, and crucially, the tyres. Because Pirelli does things differently to Firestone. And on top of that, Herta hasn't found a team yet. At least, it hasn't been announced yet. He should be able to get one, but if he doesn't, that's time wasted. And like just mentioned, Cadillac have said that Colton isn't guaranteed a seat. He's not going to get a Cadillac seat just because he's got an American passport. And several online publications have been going, yeah, this is all great, but is Herta actually any good? Because Herta has been getting a lot of hype and he's being paid a lot of money in IndyCar. And some of my more knowledgeable American friends have been saying that he's alright and, well, that's about it. And that his wages and hype have been based off him being the most likely to make it to Formula 1, despite Kyle Kirkwood beating him this year and Alex Palou being dominant this year and winning the last 3 years in a row. The race recounts a story that Towers told that when Andretti was considering buying Sauber, Herta went into the simulator and within an hour he was faster than the Sauber drivers, assumed to be Giovinazzi and Raikkonen. But the general consensus I found through talking to my friends who watch way more IndyCar than I do and consulting those elsewhere that watch a lot more IndyCar than I do is that Herta is very boom or bust. When he was being touted as Cadillac's first All-American driver, people were saying that he can't keep an IndyCar out of a gravel trap, so what makes people think that he'll do wonders in a Formula 1 car? The problem with Herta is that he'll have highs where they are very, very high, and he looks like he'll be the next big thing. But then he'll have a string of lows that can't get much lower. And part of that seems to be due to the team. Andretti will have these race weekends where they look like they'll be better organised than Ganassi or Penske and have everything dialed in and exactly how it should be. And then, as one person said, they'll have a string of races where they make Ferrari look like prime Sebastian Loeb. And this makes Herta overdrive the car to make up for the mistakes that Andretti is making. So he takes the car beyond what it and his skill set can do, and he walls it. And there are IndyCar fans who will look the other way on that because it's a lot like Charles Leclerc, a genuinely talented driver who is let down by the clowns on the pit wall. And I know it might seem like denying Herta a license looks anti-American. It looks like Formula 1 is gatekeeping and making it appear that they're scared of an American team and or driver coming in and beating them. But as one person wrote on the internet, the super license points were designed to stop two things. Number one, it was designed to prevent drivers coming in who had money and nothing else, and it was also done to stop the other teams trying to find their own teenage boy racer, like how Red Bull found Verstappen. It was brought in by the FIA and is therefore going to be biased in favour of FIA series. Add to this, IndyCar is probably more competitive than European series, so having the top drivers get the licence points mean that the cream rises to the top and they get rewarded for it. Like Palou clearly has. But the gamble is still real. While still only 24 and will be 25 in March, Herta is doing all of this while, once again, not guaranteed a seat. Perez and Bottas are under contract until the end of 2027, and by that point, Herta will be 26 years old. Which is, these days, pretty old to be making a Formula 1 debut. And again, it's not like he's front of the queue. It's not, you get the super license points, you've got a seat, buddy, because, as we've seen before, there are drivers who will be cast aside because there's somebody younger coming through. Younger and faster. Mick Schumacher is a prime example. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wanted him after 2022. Toto chose Antonelli instead. See also Daniel Ricciardo. But there is something that might help him, but at the same time there are a couple of things that might hinder him as well. Remember before I said there was a pattern emerging at the circuits at which he was winning. All except one, at least I can tell, were road courses, which is what people in Europe would call real circuits. Herta seems to be pretty good at road courses and seems to be less fast and consistent on ovals. Another thing is that the IndyCar season can be flipped on its head because of the centrepiece event, the Indy 500. Double points are awarded for that, so a driver who has been in the mid-pack for most of the season could be launched a decent way up the standings by just having one good result at the 500. At the same time, if you have a bad race at the 500, you can slip backwards a bit. In 2022, he didn't finish the 500 and lost out on a lot of points compared to those around him, and it doesn't help his statistics. In 2022, Newgarden had 5 wins and finished second in the championship. Ericsson only won the Indy 500 and was 4th. So he seems at home on real circuits and less at home on ovals, and since we don't race on ovals in Europe, he should be fine. And an issue working against him, as the race pointed out, is that while F2 is like IndyCar a spec series, the cars have less development room than an IndyCar, and the way the car is set up is pretty much how it is. If Colton likes a car with a planted rear end and ends up in a team that's got the car working more front heavy on the aero, he'll have to adapt to it. And with his tendency to overdrive when things aren't going right in the race, it could lead to more mistakes. Funnily enough, his old Andretti teammate in Romain Grosjean did exactly the same thing, particularly through 2012. Overdrove when he didn't need to, and crashed, which is probably why Red Bull was interested in him a few years ago. Herta has got something there. He's got talent. He's not the best, but he's pretty good and pretty young. And then they'll just try and iron out the kinks while he's in Formula 2. It's just that whoever he ends up with in Formula 2 in terms of a team will have to do that instead. And also the help from Perez and Bottas at the same time. It's also rumoured he might be ending up at a team like Rodin or something along those lines, which apparently is the F2 equivalent of Andretti, the third or so best team on the grid, which isn't likely to help things. But still, it's going to be an experience, and it's going to test how good and adaptable Herta can be. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. He's had a go, and at least he can say he had a red hot go. And I don't think anybody will begrudge him for having that go. You know, the door will always be open at IndyCar because of how naturally talented the guy is. He might not get a return to Andretti as such, unless his replacement in Will Power has retired by then, but I'm pretty sure any team on the IndyCar grid would hire him. I also just realised that he was teammates with Lando Norris in British F4 or whatever it was called back in 2015. That was with Carlin. But while he seems to be more prepared and serious about it than his old boss was, he can also make a few phone calls to the likes of Eilert, Schwartzman and Hauger, so he knows exactly what to expect. But there has to be admiration for this, because Herta is taking a massive gamble on achieving his Formula 1 dream. He's got the confidence to be able to say, I think I can do it, and he seems to be rated enough. And he's doing this knowing that he's not prepared at all. He'll be eaten alive by the politics, the budgets and the sheer competitiveness of who is around him, so he's got to hit the ground running. Some would say that the base talent level in the European Series is higher as well. So he's not exactly going to be able to take baby steps in the shallow end and work his way up. He's going to be thrown straight into the diving pool without armbands. And at that point, it's figure it out or, well, you know, you get the picture. And his willingness to move over to Europe is something that Michael Andretti, the last American IndyCar driver that came over to Formula 1, was not willing to do. That's American IndyCar driver, so not including, you know, Juan Pablo Montoya and also Jacques Villeneuve. So Herta knows, much like Cadillac knows, is you can't do everything out of the United States. You have to be in Europe if you want to do this properly. So it will be interesting to see what he can do, doing Formula 2 and then moving up, if indeed that happens. And it's something that nobody else has really done before. Villeneuve went straight into F1 without doing F3000. Montoya did do F3000 but went to kart and then to Formula 1, and Bourdais came straight from Champ Car. But Herta is in his prime and then doing Formula 2. That is something completely unique and showing that he's willing to take this incredibly seriously. If he can get his super license qualification over the course of 2026 and do incredibly well in Formula 2, it might convince Cadillac to bump one of Bottas or Perez aside for 2027, before their contracts are up. But at the same time, it could go a completely different way. And as we've seen before, when an American driver flops in Formula 1, it does take a long time for the next one to come along. So then, a look at the Colton Herta situation at Cadillac and how he's taking this I want to be an F1 thing incredibly seriously. If this video has given you some food for thought or otherwise been interesting and informative, do give it a like so I know I've done a good job. And for more stuff that I do around here, there's a subscribe button you can click and a bell you can ring so you never miss out on anything else that I do around here. Massive thanks as ever go out to the mad lads over at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help with the picture purchasing piggy bank or just keep the lights on, there's a link to Patreon in the description, along with links to Discord, socials, affiliates and anything else you might want or need to know. Well, there's super thanks if you want to top up my coffee cup, and memberships so you can Patreon without the Patreon. So until next time, I've been Aidan Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.